Can we please take our seats? We'd like to get. You can't hear? Can we take our seats, please? Can we take our seats, please? Welcome to the Greater Kanawha Valley's 15th annual report to the community. I'm Melvin. We're pleased to see so many of the foundation's donors, grant recipients, volunteer officials, community leaders, and residents. Our main objective today is to update you on the activities, the outputs, and the outcomes of your community foundation. The foundation is fortunate to have gives me great of the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. Please stand as I call your name. Mr. Charlie Lowe, Chair of the Board. Mr. Todd Mount, Secretary and Finance Committee Chair. Mr. Ted Ombret, Dr. Jason Castle, Dr. Michelle Easton, Ms. Monica Jansen, Chair of the Distribution Committee, Bob Orders, Investment Committee Chair, Sean Mayberry, Susan Shoemake, Ms. Deborah Sullivan, Scholarship Committee Chair, Ms. Sandy Thomas, and Mr. Philip Tissue. Would you give a round of applause to our Board of Trustees? We're also happy to have the board and staff members of our Boone County affiliate joining us this afternoon. Would you please stand and be recognized? They're in the back. Also, members of the African American Philanthropy in Action Giving Circle are also here. Would the Giving Circle members please stand? The Giving Circle is now in its third year of operation. Giving Circle in West Virginia. Identity-based philanthropy is a growing movement to dip from the grassroots up by activating and organizing its practices in marginalized communities. To describe, it is the practice of raising and leveraging resources by community, ethnicity, and gender. The 15, the Giving Circle highlights includes workshops on grant writing and legacy planning. Do stop by the Giving at the back of the auditorium. 2015 was the first year where we fully implemented the Foundation's new strategic plan is on cultivating community wealth that will achieve eternity is a place where students from early childhood to post-secondary go is that our community will support lifestyle. Will be full of strong, innovative, and effective leaders who work to create a shared vision. Our president and CEO will update you on the progress in her address. The value chain that we created 3 years ago in collaboration with the Charleston Area Medical Center is thriving. Between June and September of 2020. Additionally, the number of growers who are 2016, our former president, Becky Sepperly, joined forces with our on the value chain At the Council on Foundations Conference, the name, and I would like to publicly thank Becky, a multitude of projects across the region. The Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation is dedicated particular focus area on Charleston's west side to gain a better understanding of the assets, the opportunities within the neighborhood, and to provide residents with a platform to directly express their vision. Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation commissioned KISRA for the target area. The assessment was conducted between a review of secondary data and focus group discussions. A detailed report of our future investments in that community. Supported 2 intersecting projects. The first project, Project West Invest, which incentivized home ownership for law enforcement personnel, which targets the renovation of a historic center in the heart of that neighborhood. It demonstrates collaboration as we utilize resources from various partners, entities, Charleston Urban Renewal Authority, and nonprofits, the Second Avenue businesses in the community. That this on Sunday, April 10th, 2016, again, our former award for public philanthropic partnerships on behalf of the foundation, the West Side Initiative. We say, stay tuned. We will meaningful ways because of donors, and we thank you for being engaged. To invite to the and CEO. Thank you.
Everyone, I would like to start my remarks in introducing Michelle, which it's a great honor. It's the vision of the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. We envision a forward-thinking and closely connected community that fearlessly works to start talking about our new CEO. 18 months ago, and in accordance with our governing documents, a search committee was comprised of Nell Chilton, Melvin Jones, Todd Mal. That's what we're required to do under our documents. And we retained Kittleman and Associates, which is based in Chicago, Illinois, to assist our effort. Kittleman is a nationally known firm with special expertise in executive community. After several meetings with the Kittleman representatives, during which we reviewed the search process for the foundation's CEO, the search process began in earnest. Familiar with the history and mission of our foundation. People who might serve in that capacity. And some of you are here in the audience today, and we thank you and all the national journals that people in the foundation world receive, and reached out to their ministry. Now, what was the search committee world? Individual with of, or who could quickly develop an appreciation. We were looking for a person who had an appreciation of the role that the community, energy, the passion, and the ability to maximize foundation within our community, both in terms of our grant process generated 95 applicants from West Virginia and from around the country. And they included applicants from a number of national foundations, both private and community. So we had a terrific pool of applicants to review. And from that pool, we whittled it down. I kept resumes, and we met as a committee and had in-depth discussions about who, from that impressive group, we should then whittle down to a smaller group and invite them to Charleston, or invite them, if living in Charleston, about a couple of hours over the course of many weeks. And from unanimously and enthusiastically recommended Michelle Foster to serve as our foundation's. In Michelle, we found a fearless person with a passion, excellence, better their own. Michelle was born in Reading with her parents, who are here today, to Brooklyn, New York. Michelle earned a after graduation. Michelle began her career as an engineer with BP America in Cleveland, and there began her master's benefit in this valley. Union Carbide recruited her to South Charleston. And it was also during this period that community service. In 1998, Michelle left the world of engineering, research, and action. We all speak of it as KISRA, which is a non with no employees but Michelle, to be the first one. Under Michelle, to a staff in a variety of areas, including behavioral things as skills, mentoring, and helping them find jobs, and in helping actually create jobs in certain business loans, and helping in the area most important of learning, after school enrichment. And if building KISRA into the organization that it is today was not enough to keep her busy, New Hampshire University, and she has also completed additional university in impact investment as well as government. It's my understanding Michelle and her free theatrical productions, making candles, and soul line dancing. Staff and board will loudly attest running very mission and vision in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you. Thank you, Charlie, for that great introduction. It is a pleasure to see all of you here at my inaugural report to the community. Please give them a warm West Virginia welcome. I've been in the role now for a little under 4 months, and as Charlie said, enjoying the committee and the board of trustees for their votes of confidence in me and for their courage to embrace change. I also acknowledge the who are here, our CFO, Patty Magic. Patty. Higher Education Program Officer, Communications Director, Faye Johnson. Keep the foundation's engine moving forward. Please give them a hand. The production of this event. They're the ones who do all the stuff and the materials and everything and make us look good today and all year long. Thank you to Scott Finn and West Virginia Public Broadcasting and our photographer, their initiatives. I'm overjoyed as I met with the staff during my these men and women who are really dedicated and giving and finance committees, as well as on our health and education. All of our volunteers. Currently have 147 active volunteers. Thank you for your service and dedication to the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. Receive them on your way in. Make sure you stop at the table and get them before you leave. Critical. Please know that we appreciate you. I salute my predecessor, Community Wealth. Thank you, Becky, for your to the foundation. For fiscal year 2015. These numbers are unaudited, so they could change slightly. In 2015, the foundation received a little over. In fiscal year 2015, the foundation had over 200 and caring enough to invest in your community via your community foundation. 2015 was the first year of implementing our new strategic plan. The plan guides our proactive grant making and civic proactive investments to grow the multiple forms of wealth necessary for our community to thrive. As you individual, which includes skills, health, confidence, and income, intellectual, natural wealth, which includes political wealth, influence, and voice, and financial wealth. I believe that the foundation and our grantee partners can have significant and lasting outcomes in our education and health systems while fostering community in the communities that receive our investments. Efforts and recommended 15 grants for funding. Our program officers worked as we launched our new grant-making process. I'm referring to grantees like a 7-year-old boy who walked from his try the arts in action through their outreach program, Urban Stage, just to attend his dance class. After 2 years of performances, really serious about dance, Joni spoke with his mother and made arrangements for Uriah to be 2 nights a week. This is just so he. It was during this time that the program leaders learned that Uriah's father was not satisfaction, and in his own words, Uriah began helping Joni as a dance assistant. By sharing their love and appreciation for the art of dance, Uriah and his sister giving back. Uriah, Joni, and his mom. As a proactive, we see ourselves as accountable for successful community interventions. A proactive approach to health, education, and civic engagement/community building. Seeking breakthrough. Bear in mind that even though our strategic plan promotes a proactive culture and basic needs are still in place as they were prior to we awarded needs grants in 2015, along with 401 scholarships to suit the needs of the communities we serve. As we move forward, that their programs are effectively planned and implemented in results. We look ahead to the history of our region and the great state of West Virginia. Thank you for the support yet been told. Thank you. The Secretary of the Board of Trustees, he will now come forward and introduce.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker today, Leslie Crutchfield. Leslie is an author, a senior research fellow with the Global Impact Consultants. Leslie has co-authored 2 books, including Forces for Good, the 6, as well as Do More Than Give, the 6 practices of donors, and she was co-founder of a national nonprofit social the Chronicle of Philanthropy and Stanford Social Innovation Review, and on holds an MBA and a BA from Harvard, and she resides with her husband and her 3, and someone who's really dedicated to improve creative application. So without further ado.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd, for that warm introduction. And thank you so much to Michelle, Melvin, Charlie, the board, and all of the members and contributors. It be here with all of you today in Charleston, and I've had the chance over the course of about 24 hours just to get a little flavor of the region. Todd treated me to a great lunch at Bluegrass Cafe today, and some of you have asked me, have I had a chance to visit West Virginia before? And I was thinking, not this part, but the area. We love to, and some zip lines now that that's in fashion. So I get to come to your great state every summer. But I haven't been this far, and I really was delighted to be invited by the foundation to come and really help celebrate your 15th annual meeting, I understand. And it's fascinating to hear about all of the amazing work that the foundation is doing. So many of the practices that we write about in Do More Than Give, the 6 practices of donors who change the world, are clearly being embraced right here in this region. Michelle and her colleagues, Jane, asked me to come talk about the ideas around catalytic philanthropy and donors who are really able to go beyond check writing to catalyze change in the world. And I should tell you, the reason why my co-authors from FSG and I wrote this book is because we believe that the way philanthropy, giving, is practiced in this country has got to change. We live in such a generous society. More than $300 billion is going to be given away this year in the United States, much of it right here in West Virginia. And yet, so many of the problems seem to persist and grow and get stronger. And so the way that philanthropy traditionally nationally. So we're going to talk about some of the most able. Actually, we're at a very auspicious time to be talking about philanthropy. Those of us are celebrating the practice of philanthropy as we know it. In fact, the term philanthropy came into vogue really just 100 years ago when the very first organized foundations were being created in this country. Andrew Carnegie created the Carnegie Corporation in 1911. J.D. Rockefeller a couple years later, and then the Cleveland Foundation in 1914 was one of the first community foundations to be created. And the whole notion of philanthropy was to collect your money, your assets, and systematically give them away. It was a kind of an antidote to charity, which is what we had until that point. Charitable acts, giving through your civic associations, through your churches, your synagogues, but not only alleviate suffering, but to solve problems, to get at root causes. That's why donors like Carnegie, they funded hospitals to help ease suffering, but they also funded research to try and find the root causes. Rockefeller Foundation is behind finding the cures to hookworm, which was afflicting the country at the time. So how do you go beyond just addressing the symptoms to really tackling root causes? So given that it's been 100 years and you're all celebrating your 15th annual meeting, let's talk about it. What's different about philanthropy today and the practice of it than it was 100 years ago? I'm going to come down and take some suggestions from the audience. How's it different today? We're giving online, right? The way that we give, first of all, has changed. It's just as easy today to make a loan on kiva.org and give online, make a loan to a seamstress in Kenya so she can buy another sewing machine and bootstrap herself out of poverty as it is to drop a few bucks on the collection plate on Sunday. So definitely that's changed the way that we give. The technology money has grown. The demographic. Races, ethnicities, gender, class, average American household gifts to charity each year. Everybody so if you're in a lower income bracket. What else has changed about philanthropy in the last 100 years? Corporate had a history of corporate philanthropy. I mean, it's a great point that you raised, because one of the things that's really changed since the time of Carnegie and Rockefeller, it really changed, right? Now we talk about corporate social responsibility. At FSG, we corporate citizen, and that's certainly different. What?
Way that people get United Way of Central West Virginia, and they have the United Way Day of Caring every year, and businesses go out and do stuff with the community, because I've actually helped with it before. They do things, and they have sites all over Charleston, not just in Charleston, but in Clay County, where I used to live. They do things up there.
Mm-hmm. So they're giving, they're getting engaged in the community, going beyond just making a donation, but actually going out and participating. Great suggestion. There was another comment over here. Yeah.
You mentioned, I think the process has changed for selection of how funding is now, and the donors are much more informed now than they probably were originally.
Yes, this trend towards evidence-based giving, we really need to understand if an intervention is going to work. We're going to test it. We're going to study it, and related to that, try and be more strategic as donors. Really different today about giving. Yes, in the back.
100 years ago, we didn't have taxes to the extent we do. Many people think that they're glad and you don't feel the need so much to give.
Right, great. I mean, we didn't have the income tax when these first foundations were being. Is this notion that the relationship between now at the time when Carnegie was interesting. So he went down to Washington, D.C. from New York and asked Congress to create this. No way, if we allow you to pool your philanthropic resources along with all the corporate money you have, you're going to be more powerful than the federal government. Fast forward to today, you know, it's not no philanthropist can protect Bill Gates' his giving pledge, because his billions, as he says, are obviously, and so those are some big, complex, hairy issues. But his billions are a drop in the bucket. So, you know, the nature of philanthropy and its relation to the state, to government, the notion of the changing role of corporations, as one participant pointed out. All of these things have changed, the roles of individuals, the ability to give through technology. Everything's changed, and so what that creates is new opportunities for donors to not only change, and that can do more than give. And really what we're trying to do is contrast between the notion of the way philanthropy is commonly practiced, which is kind of, you could identify, you make a gift or a grant. If you're a foundation, at the end of the year, you might take an annual report. Catalytic donor, a donor who's trying to change a problem, make a difference. They're trying to solve levers that we can pull. What are all the different ways we can work with and through government, change policy to get a systems change? How do we work with and through communities that we're trying to serve? How do we harness market forces and break to change these problems? So as an example of one of the best examples I can think of from our research is actually a foundation based in Southern California, the Jacobs Family Foundation. And this foundation was created by Joe Jacobs, an engineer. He started his own engineering company. It became a Fortune 500 company. And when he started his family foundation, it was a small family foundation outside San Diego. They were located in a very low-income community, disinvested. Their offices were across the street from a brownfield that was saddled with an abandoned aerospace factory. And the Jacobs Family Foundation board, it was Joe and his 3 daughters, said, we want to try and make a difference right here in this very disinvested community. And so, interestingly, they didn't actually start by making any grants. They started by asking members of the community what they needed. So the Diamonds neighborhood is the name of this area, and they went door to door, much like it sounds like you did with your survey in the west part of Charleston, living room to living room, kitchen to kitchen, saying, what do you need? And they got some really interesting answers. They said, what do we need? What do we want? We want a grocery store where we can buy a piece of fresh fruit. You know, we want a bank where we can deposit our paychecks. We want a sit-down family restaurant where we can have a meal with our kids, not another KFC or Mickey D's. You know, we want what, you know, middle-income communities have, but we lack, right? And so the Jacobs Family Foundation listened, and they said, okay. And so they thought, how can we address the needs of what we're hearing in this community? And they looked at this brownfield across from their foundation, and they said, let's start there. With $2 million that they put in, they raised $20 million more, and they created what became Market Creek Plaza, a commercial enterprise zone. And they helped attract, using their connections, a big grocery chain, Food for Less, out on the West Coast, Starbucks. But most of the businesses that they helped put in this kind of large mall area were locally run, local mom and pop business. They made a point of using local labor, construction, architecture. Interestingly, they would bring in technical assistance so that local firms could be competitive in the RFP process. The commercial enterprise zone has created thousands of jobs, created income, and brought that wealth into the community. What's more, they said, you know, we want this to last. We want to have sustainable long-term impact. And Jacobs, by the way, is a spend-down foundation, so within 2 generations, it'll spend down its assets. And they said, what we really want is for the community to own this thing. And at the time, there really wasn't any way for ownership to occur among low-income participants. So for 6 years, they advocated for a policy change in the state of California through a coalition of nonprofits and in networks, and were able to pass a law that enabled the first community development IPO. So they IPO'd stock into this commercial enterprise, and today 1/3 of this thing is owned by the foundation, 1/3 is in a community trust. By the way, if you couldn't afford the $200 stock price at the opening offering, you could do a $10 a month layaway wealth. And we're very strategic. What's the lesson from here? We think it's really interesting. First lesson, Jacobs didn't even make any grants. This was an investment at the time. And at the time, it was very controversial because, you know, there's so many worthy nonprofits that definitely could have benefited from grants from this foundation. You know, they could have taken a traditional approach and said, well, let's fund some job training programs, food assistance. That's how, if they hadn't gone out and talked to people in the community and listened to what they said they needed, they would have come up with something really different. But because they listened to the local residents, because they then said, how can we solve the problems that face this low-income, disinvested community, they got a great result as a result. So they used all of the practices that we write about in Do More Than Give to be able to achieve that change. Now, one of the best practices from the Jacobs Foundation example, important, is one of the 6 practices we write about in the book is, we call it Empower the People. It's how they started by asking, and often what you have with philanthropy from more of an arm's length is, you know, they're studying a problem, they're treating neighborhood residents as sort of a problem to solve or a statistic. This foundation didn't approach it that way. They said, let's ask and co-create what the solutions could be. And by the way, when you do that, you get some really powerful and different kinds of solutions to the problems that you're trying to solve. So for instance, as they were trying to think about how to build the structures and what should be in this commercial enterprise zone, the community said, we really want a community center, kind of an arts cultural center, a lot like this place that we're in, and it's amazing, beautifully amazing space. And they didn't have space for it because part of the land was a dry creek bed ran through it. And they weren't allowed to develop on it because if there was a flash flood, the creek bed would flood. And so you couldn't build on it. And so some local people from the neighborhood said, well, what can you build on a dry creek bed? And no one had ever asked that before. And it turns out you can build a pier. You can build something on pylons. So they decided to construct their amphitheater like this that partially extends over the creek bed on pylons, just by asking regular people, who had what seemed like a naive question, turned into a really creative, innovative solution using the resources they had at hand and using local expertise and building and construction. So starting with the people that you're trying to serve. Often it's creating that space and the forum for it to come together. Another interesting, I think, best practice of catalytic donors who really drive change, is how they work through networks and support and forge networks of other donors, of the nonprofits that they work with. And what's really important about networks is we're not talking about networking and sort of, that kind of relationships. If you think about it, think about a network as a social media network, right? What's Facebook or LinkedIn? It's just a bunch of nodes connected by links. But what makes a social network like that powerful is realize that if you can forge and leverage those linkages between organizations, getting nonprofits to work collaboratively towards a common goal, then you can get far more impact than if you were just funding nonprofit to nonprofit. I know, for instance, this is the first year with the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, you're starting to fund some collaboratives among the many relationships. We talk and Do More Than Give about collective impact and how cross-sector groups of organizations come together to tackle problems. And the reason why it's so important to work collectively is the types of problems that you're trying to solve are complex. And there's kind of three types of problems in the world, if you want to kind of put it into three buckets. Some challenges could be described as simple, right? Think of a problem or a challenge like baking a cake. If you follow the recipe every time, you're going to get the same result. Other challenges that you try and tackle in the world could be described as complicated. Getting a rocket to the moon, incredibly complicated feats of engineering, physics. But if you build the machine just right and you point it towards the moon, you can count on gravity to behave the same way every time, and you can get a machine on the moon. Now we get a machine on Mars. But the kinds of problems that you're dealing with through your nonprofits, through this community foundation, could be described as complex. The social and environmental problems that we try and address. They're emergent, they're adaptive. The authors of a great book getting to maybe use the analogy of raising a child. What works with one child certainly doesn't work with the other. Many times you get the equal and opposite reaction from a child of what you're looking for. You cannot, like gravity, plan on it behaving the same way every time. So you've got to adapt, and the complexity of the problems, whether it's turning around a depressed workforce, whether it's improving your public school system, whether it's getting universal access to quality health care. These are big, complex problems. The issue is that philanthropy for too long, kind of going about things traditionally, have been tackling these problems like they're simple, right? If you're trying to, increase graduation and college attendance rates among low-income or first-generation college attendees, that's a very cool solution, is give them a scholarship that gives them the money. But for people in education, to keep somebody in school, graduating, and making it all the way through and all the challenges they face, they need different kinds of support beyond the financial. So you've got to attack a problem with the level of complexity that it exists at. And the catalytic approaches that the donors in Do More Than Give use really kind of meet that challenge. They fight fire with fire. So these are just some of the practices that we've seen high-impact donors use to change the world. I see much of it happening right here in your region. Because this event is focused around this idea of having the courage to change, there's a great quote that we use in Do More Than Give that I think really captures the notion of some of these practices. It's actually from Robert F. Kennedy. And I don't know if you remember this from his speech, but he talks about it's from the numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time a person stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others, like all of you do in this room, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And crossing each other from a million different corners of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. So what are your ripples of hope? Every individual in this room, whether you're giving a few bucks each month or each week, or you're giving away millions through a foundation, whether you're giving of your time, if you're giving of your cachet, your connections, there's so many ways that you can contribute to advancing the causes that you care about for making a difference in the world. And I know that many of the problems that you face here in the region are great, but I also know that the generosity and the courageousness and the innovation that you possess in your community is even greater. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Les. I learned a lot of new, innovative stuff. We'll have to be talking some more. Really neat stuff. Leslie, afterwards, the books are $25. Afternoon and spending, we know everyone's busy. Thank you so much for taking the time out and with us. Annual report to the community. Everyone at home, office, we can mail one to you if you do not receive one within the week or so. We are proud to announce our new website. It's ready, but view it, and everything's close to perfect. It was developed by Cucumber and Company in Beckley, West Virginia. Jane was pretty excited about that. So it'll be both put. So for coming out, and have a great evening. Refreshments in the back.